Welcome to episode 6 of Petey's Panel. My guest at this time is one half of one of my favorite wrestling podcasts. And you know what? I think these two, like the Wrestling Soup, it's called the Wrestling Soup. And my guest at this time is one half. His name is the one and only Anthony Missionary Thomas. Anthony, welcome, man.
Thanks, man. How you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm good. You? Everything all right?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I mean, I'm doing as well as can be expected in these trying times that we've all been facing as of late. You know, it's been a chore for wrestling this past week too. You know, I'm sure some people have looked into it, but no, thank you very much for having me on the show, too.
Oh, it's an absolute honor. I mean, I've been a fan of yours since 2012. Like I always said, you and Joey Numbers were like the Opie and Anthony of wrestling podcasts.
That is high praise, man. Because I mean, I know Joey liked them too growing up, but I mean, I was always a big fan of like radio, even in my youth and stuff like that. And Opie and Anthony to me are like the pinnacle talk show. It's like the best radio show I've ever heard. I know people love Stern. I know there's people that love Man Cow, you know, and you can go down the list of different, you know, radio jocks and stuff like that. But Opie and Anthony were the two guys. They were the boys. You know what I mean? And they had some great guests and some great partners and stuff like that. Jim Norton, Patrice O'Neill, stuff like that. So I take that as high praise. Thank you.
Oh, anytime. Like, but my first question is and obviously this is going to be a typical cliche question, but I'm going to ask it because I'm very curious to know. When did you start getting into podcasting?
Technically, I got into podcasting. I want to say about 2003. It was a wrestling podcast. I used to be part of this place called the OWMF.RU, which was one of the original wrestling media forums. And they would actually, in the early 2000s, they would stream WWF pay-per-views before that was even really a thing. I mean, obviously now, today, everybody is streaming everything, but in 2003, that wasn't very commonplace. And I was a part of those forums. That's how I started it out. And it was a compilation to those forums that I decided to do kind of my own little show. And it started off with just me in the beginning, doing like almost like disc jockey stuff where I was just playing different wrestling themes, talking about the wrestlers. And then that kind of went over to a group format when I had more people that wanted to come on and just, you know, gab about wrestling, you know, talk about what was currently going on and stuff like that. And that became Revolution Radio. And for people that have followed my career in Wrestling Soup and stuff like that, they're probably at least somewhat familiar with, you know, my previous shows that I did before Wrestling Soup. So I did that for about 3 years, and it ended in 2006 on Blog Talk Radio. That's where I ended it back then. And then after that, I kind of hitched my wagon around 2006 and started playing with production work and doing a lot of, like, you know, voiceover commercials, a lot of scenarios. And I was doing that for the Don, Tony, and Kevin Castle show, who had been around obviously since '98. You know, and they started in '98 on hotlines, on the 900 numbers and stuff like that. So even before Skype and MSN Messenger and stuff like that, they were doing the telephone lines. But yeah, I got involved with them. I started helping out the Minority Reports, what they were called back then, and I would make intros and commercials and stuff. And worked with them, brought them around in 2008 to the DTKC show. And in 2010, Wrestling Soup kind of started as a complimentary show. It was myself and a close friend, Andrew Carlick, was my co-host. And Andrew Carlick still does podcasting this day. He's done Stern Nation, which was a Howard Stern compliment show. He also runs False Count Radio, which has been around almost 10 years itself at this point. They've gotten a lot of awards and recognition through PWI and a lot of other places. But me and Andrew started Wrestling Soup, and it was a compliment show to the Don, Tony, Kevin Castle show. So when their show went off the air, a day or two later, we would do our show and pretty much just comment on the things that they were talking about. And we kind of made Wrestling Soup as more of a community-based show, which at that point wasn't really done yet. But considering that I had like a history in forums and stuff, my whole thing was based upon, it's not my show, it's everybody's show. And Wrestling Soup kind of grew in that way. And we had like a rotating chair for the longest time. And that's when Joey Numbers stepped in. Joey Numbers was a rotating chair host. and we hit it off, man. We clicked, like, just, it was perfect. It was, ham and cheese, peanut butter jelly, whatever you want to call it. It was great. And the show kind of grew from there, and we went to the Stitcher Awards for Best Sports Commentary. We lost, but I mean, if you look at the dais that we were in, we had Fox Sports, Sports Illustrated, ESPN. There was another one too. There was another, but it was like pretty much all these multi-billion-dollar companies. And then here's Wayne and Garth just sitting in there with them. So I was just happy to go to the dance a little bit, And from that was like 2012. We've continued to do the show. We've gotten other recognitions over the years and stuff like that. And I think we still keep it very much a community show. I like the format of it. And I mean, you brought up Opie and Anthony. I would never classify myself on that level. But, at the same point, I can easily say that their style of show is something that I've always attributed or wanted to mimic, in my own work. So, but there's a long story short. So, yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you worked with Don Tony and Kevin Castle, you and Joey Numbers. Like, I think it's like interesting. Like, I love seeing like when each of you is like are on each other's like shows. For instance, it's like you're doing a show with Don Tony, or Joey Numbers is doing like a Wrestling Soup with Kevin Castle, or vice versa. To me, that's like when you get like the APA, you get the APA and the Hardys, and Bradshaw teams up with Jeff Hardy, and Farouk teams up with Matt Hardy. That's why, because it's so cool to see like four different hosts from two different channels, like going different shows. It's like a SmackDown guy going to Raw and vice versa.
Right. And yeah, it's totally a family environment, and they're not the only ones too. I mean, we've had a lot of other shows just kind of come in. Yeah. Oh yeah, Jason's been on the show. He's been on the Frank and Gus quarantine. So that's the other thing that we've been doing lately for like the last 3 months is we've been doing a show every day for the quarantine because everybody's stuck at home, So we've had Jason on for a show. We've had Kevin on. We haven't had DT on, but I've been on DT's show because I still do Breakfast Soup, which is one of his companion shows. But it's always been kind of a family. There's always an outreach. Like there's a group of shows that, we're synonymous with, like, the Alleged Wrestling podcast, Julian's podcast, Lee Sanders and the RCWR show, Yuck Nasty and Dogger Baby from Get in the Corner, which isn't even a wrestling show. They're just out there comedians, but I've always felt like it, and maybe you've seen this too, there's a lot of podcast rivalries, which is the silliest thing to me, because you would think that in a community where you're trying to build each other up to getting the most audience or to experiencing the most audience, having rivalries is really the silliest thing. So I've always kind of kept my arms outstretched to anybody that ever wanted to come on the show, or anybody that ever needed help with anything. I mean, I've always tried to be as giving as I could to as many people as possible, and I think that builds a better show too.
I agree.
So.
And I learned in like the 8 years I've been a fan of the Wrestling Soup and the Don Tony and Kevin Castle show. Like I've learned that all four of you. Look, and I said this in a jokingly way with my friends, because I have two friends that are huge fans of Wrestling Soup. I said to them, that, Anthony, Don Tony, Missionary, Kevin Castle, and Joey Numbers are so, charismatic, like when they're on those shows, that they should actually replace the commentators for SmackDown and Raw. Replace Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler and Samoa Joe. And I say this jokingly way, I think all four of them should be commentators. Have Don Tony, Kevin Castle on Raw. Have Missionary and Joey Numbers on SmackDown.
I would actually say John Draper would be better at that job. And I'm not just being overly humble here. Like when it comes to comedy and stuff like that, when it comes to being clever and witty and quick, John Draper was a perfect addition to us. Like he came in 3 years ago about now. So he's relatively new, but he's a solid third member to the show. And I would have to absolutely say that, those guys, those four are far better at talking and breaking things down than I am. So, but thank you for the humility. Thank you. So,
you know what made me a big fan? Because I remember I was watching, first I was watching the Don Tony and Kevin Castle show. And then you were, I believe in one episode, it was the Don Tony Kevin Castle show the night after SummerSlam 2012. Where Triple H gave this speech, and I remember you made a funny joke. You were like, he was crying like he was waiting for his bologna and cheese sandwich.
we, that's always been the fun thing about the show is that we riff. We riff. There's no scripts. It's not. I mean, there's a lot of shows that do a lot of preparation, and more power to them. I went to broadcasting school. I know what the preparation is all about. But especially when it comes to wrestling, maybe it's different if I was doing a nonstop like NFL show or soccer or MLB. Maybe it would be a little bit different to have those stats handy and everything else like that. But wrestling is a little more androgynous. It can kind of go in any different way. So making fun of the show is just part of the show. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah. You have to, you can't be too serious about wrestling. Like, there are people out there. I shit you not. There are people out there that take it so seriously. Man, he didn't lose it in 2016. He lost it in November of 2015. It's like, oh my, all right, sorry, don't shoot. Yeah.
Yeah, one mistake. Oh,
Right.
But Missionary, I got to ask you this though too. Like, from one wrestling fan to another, and I'll tell you, like, when I first got into it. But when did you become a fan of wrestling? Like, how old were you? Take me there.
So WrestleMania. Well, I was technically a fan a little bit earlier than WrestleMania 6, but WrestleMania 6 was the moment that I knew this was mine. Like, I loved wrestling at WrestleMania 6. Because I mean, I remember WrestleMania 3, I was alive and stuff like that. I remember watching it, but my aunt brought me into it. My aunt, she passed a while ago, but she was amazing. And it was, Kathy loved wrestling, like, hands down. My family didn't care for wrestling. My grandfather hated wrestling, just hated it. Every time he saw me with him, it's like, turn that crap off, like that kind of deal. But my aunt loved wrestling, and she got me into it. And every single time I would ever go to her house, she would always turn on the paper. She would order every pay-per-view, even back then, I think it was like on Group W cable, for the old school heads. And so we would watch, wrestling all the time, Wrestling Challenge, and WrestleMania 6, watching the Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan, because I was a fan of the Ultimate Warrior. I wasn't a big Hulk Hogan fan. Like, I know so many people were like, "Oh, I loved Hulk Hogan." Not me. I was a Warrior guy. I had the cheetah poster. Like, it was Ultimate Warrior standing there just jacked, and it was like an orange poster with like cheetah stripes on it. Had that poster. Had his wrestling buddy. I don't know if you remember those, but they were like little pillows.
I had the Macho Man. I had the WCW Macho Man. Did you have the I gotta ask you this? Did you have the hard giant pull string warrior figure? Like, it was a giant.
No, I saw those. Yeah, the stretchy ones. I didn't have one of those, but I did have the wrestling buddy, which was like a pillow of Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, like, and their hands are like this, right? Like, their hands were like, yeah. I had the Macho Man when in his
That's great, man. But yeah, no. So I was really into the Ultimate Warrior even at that time, and I think that was the first time I really got just encapsulated as a younger kid into watching that. And the fact that Warrior won was just amazing. I don't know. I've watched that match several times. As a matter of fact, I try not to watch the match too much, because every time I watch that match, I immediately get flashbacks to me and my aunt. I immediately go back into that moment as a kid, and I just want to put on my onesie and just kick my feet up in the air and watch it on TV, So I kind of keep it almost pure, to the point where I only watch it like maybe once a year. You know what I mean? But it meant so much to me, and especially now that she's gone, it means even more, because it's still my way of, not only paying homage to my wrestling roots, but paying homage to my family that's no longer with me. So.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I got into wrestling because, I was born in 1990. Like, I got into wrestling in 99. I remember my dad and my grandfather would always watch, like, wrestling. In fact, my father was watching Valentine's Day Saint Massacre in 1999, where Big Show made his debut under the ring. You remember when he came up from under the ring?
Yes.
Watch that, and I was like, okay, this is cool. But I didn't really get into wrestling until that Backlash. And my first match I ever watched in wrestling was Big Show versus Mankind, the Boiler Room Brawl.
Classic.
It's one of my favorites. And then I was, I got into wrestling around the time when the corporate ministry was that was kicking. And then, unfortunately, a month later, what happened to Owen Hart at Over the Edge, 1999.
Right,
that
right.
that day actually almost made me stop watching wrestling because I was so upset about when Owen passed away. I was like when Jim Ross announced that Owen Hart died, that I was like in tears. I didn't watch wrestling for like 2 weeks because of it.
Wow. Yeah, I don't blame you, man. There's been some horrible moments in wrestling, and Owen Hart's fall in the ring is up there as one of the most. You know, I mean, if people want to talk about like the top five worst just scenarios in the history of wrestling, Owen Hart is up there. You know, have you watched that Dark Side of the Ring, by the way, where they
I love
covered
the
Owen Hart?
yeah, I watched that one. I watched all the episodes. The Brawl for All was one of my favorites. I
Yeah,
love. And by the way, it's a great documentary. I love it. It's like better than Beyond the Mat.
yeah, yeah. Those, I think they're. I'm not sure if they're brothers or if they're friends, but it's two guys working on it. I wish I remember their names off the top of my head, and I don't mean any insult by not remembering, but it's two guys that work on that whole Dark Side of the Ring, and they are amazing. They've been working on some of this stuff for years. I remember when they came out with the Chris Benoit one that opened up season
Oh,
two,
it was
and yeah, it was a two-parter, and I remember talking to them because I received I received like the video early, and I posted it for a couple of people that I saw from other people that were giving it to me. I mean, I didn't receive it early, but you know, through the grapevine. And they asked me, they're like, "Where in the world did you get that early?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm not trying to get everybody in trouble." I'm like, "Well, I don't really know. I mean, I got it from somebody else, but." They're like, "Yeah, can you pull that?" And I'm like, "Sure, no problem." And then that's when they revealed to me, they're like, "Yeah, we've been working on just these two episodes for the last 4 years." And I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, just the amount of work that you guys put into just two episodes is insane. So I immediately had a ton of respect for them because we're not just talking about like a lot of TV shows get churned out and then you know they'll do two or three in a day. This is something, and I believe them. They had no reason to fib or anything like that, and you could tell when you watch these Dark Side of the Ring documentaries, you can see that there's a lot of history and a lot of time that they put into them, and each one of them is like a mini documentary. It's great.
It is. And did you have a top three? Because my top three are the Bruiser Brody episode. I love the Brawl for All, and I love the what was that one? The New Jack one was very interesting.
I liked the New Jack. I saw a lot of people give the New Jack one flack, and I think the only problem with the New Jack one is there's so many more stories they could have told. Like there's more to New Jack than just that hour, you know.
Except
And I know,
the mass transit, right?
well, I mean, besides that, I mean, even talking about the stuff with Terry and you know going into further of his bounty hunter career and there's just a lot of aspects to New Jack that should have been expanded upon. You know, the mass transit stuff was a little harsh, and I mean they handled it well, but I just think that there's a lot of other avenues they could have went down with him, and especially when you're talking about like the reemergence of ECW and then Hardcore Homecoming. They didn't even touch any of that, and I'm thinking, I'm like, he was very vocal then, and he was very unhappy with both of these separations of the company because obviously TNA had their ECW pay-per-view and stuff like that. And I understood why he was unhappy with both of them because they weren't pure representations of what ECW was. I mean, obviously one was run by Vince, you know, and then the other one was run by what Dixie and Jeff Jarrett. So, I mean, all three of these people had nothing to do with ECW, you know. So, I just wanted to see more from New Jack. But no, Chris Benoit had to have been hands down my favorite. I think only because we really got to see the mind of Nancy's sister and we got to see the mind of his son. And I thought that it was interesting because it was so emotional. That second episode was just, it's painful to watch, man.
It was.
You know, yeah. Yeah, if you weren't crying, you were like, oh, what are you, a monster?
Were you shocked though, Anthony, that Kevin Sullivan declined to do it?
No, I wasn't shocked. I kind of expected him not to. And I think he went on, I'm not sure if he went with Sean Oliver or somebody else afterwards, and he did some kind of like commentary by himself. But no, I think because he felt, and because there was a period of time that people were blaming Kevin Sullivan for Benoit and Nancy. Like it was only a rumor, but people did blame him. Like it was one of those rumors that actually had traction from people, and they thought that there was some serious merit to it when there really wasn't. But I don't think that he would have come on there only because of just that alone. I think that would have been a little odd, and especially because they opened up doors about, Kevin Sullivan and Nancy's relationship that I didn't even know about. I didn't know about the abuse. I didn't know about Nancy's sister being in danger with Kevin Sullivan. Like these are things that I don't think anybody previously knew until we watched that. And all of a sudden, now it was like, well, maybe Kevin Sullivan was a jerk, So, but
I'm sorry,
yeah.
what were you gonna say?
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, it's kind of what you're saying is very similar to, the snooker one, where you learn more about Nancy, Argentina. Argentina was her last name.
Yeah, Argentina.
You learn more about her family, like, and her side, like her sister. Like, you learn more. Like, it's like you either learn to you actually respect them after watching it, or you just don't like the person even more. Like, but watching the Bruiser Brody one made me love Tony Atlas even more after what he said.
Right. Another good series too that people don't really talk about anymore, but it gets up there every once in a while. Did you ever watch the 30 for 30 series that ESPN does?
No, I haven't watched that one yet.
They did a couple, they've done a bunch now, I think, but they have one on Ric Flair that is still my favorite to this day because it is just absolutely heartbreaking to realize it's heartbreaking to realize how little he thinks of himself when the entire world paints him as a hero. And some of the stupid things that he's done to his own life that he regrets now, like he's come back from this now, but there was a point in time where, he was drinking himself literally into the grave and he didn't care. It's like, you got a daughter, you've got family, you've got millions of fans around the world. You literally have anything you want at your fingertips. You have respect, you have idolization. He's like, yeah, it didn't matter. It didn't matter, just wanted to die. And hearing Ric Flair say that, it's just mind-blowing. Like now he's recovered, he's no longer an alcoholic, he's not doing any of the, other partying. Yeah, right. But there was a point there where he was talking about it, and it's just like, wow, that's a dark place to be. But they did one with, like I said, Ric Flair. They did one, I believe, with Scott Hall.
Did they do one with
Which one?
Andre the Giant, or no?
I think they did one on Andre the Giant too. Yes, yeah. There's been some really good little documentaries that have come out. Did you watch the Resurrection of Jake Roberts?
Yes, I did. I thought it was really well done.
That was so good.
Dude, that's another him, yeah. Scott Hall, like the guys you just mentioned, like these are example of guys that hit rock bottom and then like eventually clean themselves up. Unfortunately, like then there's some that unfortunately, like one of my favorite wrestlers, Eddie Guerrero, unfortunately cleaned himself up, but it got back to him, like it caught up with him.
Yeah, he still had a weakened heart. I mean, it was all the damage of the years of abusing, pills and everything else like that. Even though he did the right thing, he became a family man, he cleaned his life up, the damage was done. I mean, that's what makes it so heartbreaking, even to talk about Eddie Guerrero. Actually, it was, not to say a funny story, but Eddie passed on my birthday. So, he passed on November 13th. And so, when I woke up that day, I was still doing the forums and stuff, like even back during the Revolution Radio days. And I remember everybody telling me, oh, rest in peace, Eddie Guerrero. And I thought everybody was ribbing me. Like, I'm such an asshat. When I first jumped online, everybody's hitting me with this rip Eddie Guerrero. I'm like, shut up, he's not. What are you talking about? And yeah, sure enough, I got an eye-opening, I got an awakening that day. That was really sad. Now, I was deeply mortified because not only was he at the top of his game at that time, he was having fantastic matches with Chavito. He was having matches with Kurt Angle that were just next level, and it's like now he's gone out of nowhere. He just celebrated with Benoit not that long ago in the ring together with their titles. Like, he was at the top. You were expecting Eddie Guerrero to be the guy. Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit were going to be the two guys that usher in the new wave of wrestling, with Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle. And yeah, that didn't happen.
And he was one of the SmackDown 6, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
It's a shame too, because the irony between Benoit and Eddie's death. Tell me if I'm wrong here, Anthony, but weren't they both supposed to win the title the day they died?
Were they? I don't remember that.
because Stephanie McMahon hinted like in the tribute video for Eddie that he was supposed to win because Batista, remember he had that bandage around his tricep, and he was supposed to be out for X amount of time. So they were gonna have him drop it, from what I heard, to Eddie. It's just like with Benoit. Like Benoit was supposed to go over at Night of Champions Vengeance against CM Punk.
Right. I don't know. It's depressing.
It is. I don't
Man.
want to bring it up though, but just because I was in high school when both of them died, like, and it was just so upsetting. Like, and like you, I woke up seeing R.I.P. Eddie like on the website. I'm thinking to myself, maybe they're just, I don't know if this is a joke or not, because remember they did that with Al Wilson. You remember?
Right. Yes, with Don Marie and Tori. Yeah.
So I thought it was some kind of joke, but then unfortunately, it wasn't a joke.
I know, and that's the thing too, is that you're not expecting wrestling to be serious at the time. Eddie Guerrero, I mean, because even the way that they handled Owen versus the way that they handled Eddie is completely different. With Owen, everything was a cover-up. Everything was just shut up, pretend it didn't happen. There's no on-screen grab. I mean, later on there was and stuff like that, but at that time, when it happened, it was like just shut up, don't say nothing, just show goes on. When Eddie passed, all of a sudden everybody stopped, took notice, and paid homage. And it was like, okay, well, this is different. And when it first hit me, like I said, I just wasn't expecting that level. And I mean, social media was still in its infancy. I mean, we were still using MySpace and baby Facebook, so we were still in our infancy for social media, and we were still using forums and such like that, but it was out there. And this was like one of those first moments that I remember as a wrestling fan where social media came into any kind of account, where everybody kind of came together. So, yeah.
It's ironic how something that sad could bring everybody together, though. It's terrible. Like that, something so horrifying, like the passing of somebody just brings everybody together. When it should be like, regardless if the person's alive or not, I think it should bring everybody together. If the person was alive.
Right.
And I do want to get your opinion on this because I read so many articles and dirt sheets. I don't know if it was true or not, but I want to get your opinion on it. The original match for Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 22 was supposed to be Eddie Guerrero versus Shawn Michaels because they said that Eddie was like the Latino Shawn Michaels.
That's fair. I don't like that in one way because I think Eddie was his own entity. Like Eddie was his own person. Like other people should be an Eddie Guerrero, not Eddie Guerrero happens to be somebody else. Shawn Michaels is amazing too. I'm not saying that, being called Latino Shawn Michaels is a bad thing. Their style is a little bit different. Their swagger is different. I mean, I don't know. I never would have put those two. I would absolutely, obviously, put them in a ring together because, my God, you're going to get some amazing matches, out of both of them. But thinking that they're like a clone of each other, nah, I don't see it.
I mean, I agree with you. And unless Michaels does not like it, because you remember what he did to Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam 2005. Remember when he was like,
oversold? Yes.
Oversold. It was ridiculous. And these specific matches, because I thought 2005 was a really good year for wrestling because, we had like 5 different feuds that were amazing on both shows. You had Triple H Batista, you had Cena JBL, you had Ray and Eddie, you had you had Undertaker and Randy Orton, Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels. This was the year of so many great feuds. I want to get your opinion of the year 2005 for wrestling.
Oh man, I'd have to go in there and re-examine it. It's been a while since I've watched 2005, but I do remember. It's kind of sad to say, but once you got past 2005, 2006, I think that's when we started noticing the decline of a lot of the storylines and stuff like that. And 2006 was still a big year because I think that was the year that Paul Heyman was still running SmackDown. And SmackDown was doing amazing storylines and amazing numbers, and people were in love with it. So it's almost like there was the Attitude Era and then the Ruthless Aggression Era, which was, I think that was the 2004 to 2006, was Ruthless Aggression, where Vince was still, putting his grapefruits on the line. But I think that was the last time that I thought that wrestling was really above and beyond. And we were still pumping out, not only new stars, because I mean, there's a lot of guys that came out from there. I mean, Brock Lesnar, obviously a little bit earlier than that, but still, he was such a major force. Even when he left for the Minnesota Vikings, people still wanted to see Brock come back. And he did eventually, obviously. And there were other people too. Like there were even like the world's greatest tag team. Shelton Benjamin is still wrestling today, but they were so prominent even back then. And I think, yeah, right. And that's the other thing too, is that there was a lot of established guys. There were a lot of guys that weren't established during the Attitude Era that actually had a moment in the Ruthless Aggression Era. And I think that's what a lot of us enjoyed, was a lot of the mid-carders grew up. You know, a lot of the acts that were at the lower tier or the babies were growing up, and now they were giving us great shows. And before they went through all the changes, which unfortunately happened because of, once Benoit passed, there was a lot of changes that happened in wrestling, and not for the better. Looking back in hindsight, the recognition of, drug problems, the recognition of concussions and stuff, absolutely beneficial. Absolutely a great thing that came from such a horrible travesty. But on the flip side, as far as censoring, self-censoring, catering to the lowest common denominator as far as wrestling fans go, I think it hurt a lot of people, and it hurt the future of wrestling. And right now it seems like, as much as I love WWE wrestling and international wrestling as it goes, it's you're watching an entire company and a generation of fans playing off the laurels of what happened in 2006. So
makes sense. And I want to get your opinion on this though. Do you see like AEW being like what WCW was in 1990? I'm gonna say 1996 to 1999, or no?
I know a lot of people make that comparison, but I don't think it's fair when you consider the lineage that WCW had, even when they got into 96 to 99. WCW had years and years behind them, obviously with the NWA and everything else like that. AEW is an upstart program that has a lot of fire. And there are a lot of people that want to believe the Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, they want to believe the Tony Khans, and they want to enjoy their wrestling for what it is. Chris Jericho is a fantastic role model for the rest of that company. And they have a new breed of stars that a lot of people aren't used to seeing because they haven't been on WWE television, even though they also have former WWE stars in AEW. But I would not give them the WCW lineage. It's just not fair to the legacy of WCW. If anything, though, I would be nice to say that I think that you can classify them in the same vein as like a Lucha Underground or a Wrestling Society X or some other promotion that had a lot of fire and it had a lot of love from a lot of fans, but is still in its infancy. The best thing that we can hope for AEW is that they continue to grow, even in the middle of the COVID, pandemic and everything else like that, which has been a thorn in the paw of wrestling for a minute now. But I kind of hope that the company itself grows and creates their own legacy. But to classify them as WCW, I've heard people say, "Oh, it's WCW 2000." It's like, man, let's not do that to them either, So, yeah.
But you know what I like about it though is because like some names I'm glad that they got Tony Schiavone back, because I am a big fan. I like Tony Schiavone. Like in WCW, he was the voice of WCW, just like Jim Ross was the voice of WWF, like during the the Monday Night Wars. And people don't. There's not many people that like Schiavone. I like him personally. I think he's a fun announcer. I actually liked him more than Mike Today or Mark Madden.
Oh, you didn't like the oh gosh, why am I blanking on his nickname? What was Mike Tenay's nickname again? Do you remember?
The Professor.
Professor.
Or was it the Professor? Or was it Iron Mike today?
No, no, it was the Professor. You didn't like the Professor? I like Mike Tenay.
No, I like Mike today, but I liked him more in TNA. Like
right,
I thought he was
him and Don West were great. Him and Don West are very much an under. Well, they're not talked about very much. When people talk about, oh, I love these commentators together, I don't think Mike Tenay and Don West got as much love as they should have. I think they were a lot better than a lot of people recognize, because TNA was still such a smaller company even at the time when they were doing a lot of the color commentary, that I don't think they got the recognition on the same level. But I love them. I love Mike Tenay.
I agree. No, I love Mike today. I just thought he was much better in TNA than he was in WCW. Because WCW was really Tony Schiavone. Like he was the voice of WCW, just like Mike today was the voice of TNA.
Sure, fair enough. Yes.
Uh, I like and also much like you guys, like you, Joey and D'Antoni and Kevin Castle. I love any kind of shoot interviews I can watch, whether it's RF video, kayfabe commentaries. I love all of them, like because you learn a lot from them. Like you learn like behind the scenes stuff, and that's why I love this Dark Side of Rings. Because and here's another thing too. Tell me if this is pretty cool, Anthony. That like in Dark Side of Rings, how cool is it to see like the uncanny? Like for instance, they're actually recreating the broth roll, like like those like those like things where it's like faded to black, like type thing, and you see, like if you're getting a scene of like Godfather getting knocked down by Bart Gunn, they're recreating that scene as like a montage thing, which I think was cool.
Yes. Yeah, no, they definitely care about what they're doing. Those guys, like I said, they went above and beyond. So when they told me that it took 4 years to make 2 episodes, I totally believe them once you actually see the the project. But yeah, no, they figured out the formula that works, because I've noticed that they've done that in a few other things too. They kind of make it like a blurry cam, but at the same time you can see that they have actors actually physically reenacting these moments that we cannot get on video, in order to give people the imagery in their mind of what actually happened. It's very meta of them, but at the same time, it's pretty ingenious. But yeah, I totally appreciate production tricks like that. I think that's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And are you shocked that maybe they'll do it for season 3? Because I heard they got renewed for season 3. But are you shocked they didn't do like, episodes like on Luna Fashawn or like the Ring Boy scandal or the Ring Boy scandal '91?
There's so many more too. One of the big ones that I want to see is Canyon. People forget about Chris Canyon, but yeah, Chris Canyon was he was very open about being gay, and he had a lot of problems in WWE and WCW for being gay. And when he tried to make that public, to WWE and stuff, he was also very depressed. He was in a very dark state of mind. And one of his best friends at the time was, Sinister Minister, James Mitchell. One of his best friends, one of the guys that, was his roommate, his buddy, and everything else like that. Like not just back when they were, working together in WCW, but even in TNA and the WWE run and stuff like that too. And I remember reading, his book, Canyon's book when he passed, and I think it's one of those things, the fact that he took his own life because of the way that he felt because he was gay, especially in WWE's climate, at the time. I think that's something that needs to get investigated by these guys, and I'm not correlating it to WWE or anything else like that. Obviously WWE had a lot of positive gay moments too in the company. They've had some shiners across the eye as well. But things like Billy and Chuck, I think they received the teapot from the LGBT community, which was amazing. They ended the storyline a little goofy, but as far as the characters went, it was actually respected by the gay community, and the WWE won an award for that. And I was always kind of like, well, that's cool. That's good of you. For all the bad things that people say about wrestling storylines, that was kind of like, all right, that's cool. And I think people really liked the Billy and Chuck storylines. They were funny with Rico, Yeah, they were great.
I like Rico.
Yeah, he was actually just on Kenny Boland's show the other day, which was kind of funny. So yeah. But
Anthony, is it like kayfabe when? Because I watched this thing. I don't know if you saw it or not, but there was this debate that Cornette had with Kenny Boland. I think Jerry Jarrett was the moderator. Was that
no. That was a work. That was a work.
That was a work. But are they really friends in real life or no?
They've been friends for over 40 years.
Okay.
But right now, there's a lot of tension. I don't believe that any of this stuff is a work right now. They're kind of going back and forth. It's Kenny and his son Chris, and his son Chris happens to also be Jim Cornette's godson too. So that just shows you how close they are. Where Kenny's child is Jim Cornette's child too. So. But there's definitely some heat there. And Jim Cornette has a lawyer after them and stuff like that. And I don't know how closely you've been following some of the scandals that have been going on over the last week and a half.
I can't keep up with all of them. There's like a lot of people are getting called out for this.
Yeah,
I think
it's rough.
From Joey Ryan.
Yeah, Joey Ryan has, I think the last count was 16 people that came out after Joey Ryan.
Matt Riddle got called.
Matt Riddle got called, but the interesting thing about Matt Riddle, he's the only one that has this. He had a restraining order on his accuser years before she even made this accusation. and he already told WWE and informed WWE and their lawyers about the situation that she brought up way like when he first got into the company. So his situation is different because we're talking about something that's, you know, already been the litigation in court and everything else like that. So they can't really talk about it. His lawyer came out and wrote something about it, which we made fun of because he made his statement on printer labels, on CD labels. And I was just like, that's just horrible. But he is a legit guy. He's a good lawyer and stuff like that. But it's just, he's in one of those situations where he's known. The other one that we've been talking about too is Marty Skrull, which is, he's really just an awful person.
What
And there's a
about
lot.
what about Will Ospreay? Wasn't he one of those names too?
Yeah, he was named too. You know, yeah. There's
One
what was that?
well, the one that absolutely shocked me was Congo Kong.
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, like I saw his name on the list. Like,
Really?
yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of names that I'm not. There's a lot of names on the list. You know, Velveteen Dream is another big one that's on the list, and he's down in NXT. He actually just deleted all of his social media accounts. Contrary to popular belief, I don't think he did it himself. I think a lawyer told him to. That just seems like what would happen. You know what I mean? Especially if you have litigation going, they don't want that information out there. So,
You know who else was on that list? Surprisingly, and this is the last person I would expect it. Justin Roberts.
yeah, that was a little out there too. That one actually kind of hurt my feelings a little bit, because I've talked to Justin Roberts before. You know, I was a fan of his book, and obviously, if you go even into, you know, some of his history with, you know, Connor's Cure and everything else like that, he's always seemed like a very stand-up dude, like a guy that was doing things to be altruistic, and for him to get a nod, you know, in this horrible pandemic of wrestlers, you know, I'm very curious what's going to come of that, you know, so.
I understand. Like, and like I was gonna say something else too. Like, it just sucks that the speak out movement. It's just so many names are being called. Like, it's just like it's terrible because it's the same thing. Wasn't the same thing also with Enzo Amore?
Well, you know, we were one of the adamant defenders of Enzo Amore. Matter of fact, we were literally the only show that was defending him because we did the legwork. I did the legwork and looked up, you know, his accuser, and found out a lot of inconsistencies, you know, in her stories, a lot of inconsistencies in the way that she was presenting herself. And when this stuff went to TMZ, and it wasn't until Enzo's lawyer put out a statement that her best friend immediately leaked all the receipts because he didn't want to go to court, he didn't want to get sued or anything else like that. So he went on YouTube and said, "Here's all the information I have. Leave me alone," you know. And it pretty much outed it because her whole thing was, you know, she had no consent and she didn't know what she was doing. And this kid had receipts of her going, "Yeah, I just banged a wrestler," and like real proud of it, and stupid stuff, you know. And yeah.
Yeah, and Anthony, he's a very nice guy. I met him at the '80s Wrestling Con in the iPlay Center in Jersey last year. A very very nice guy. He gave me a pep talk because I told him when he came out, like it kind of inspired because I'm an Enzo Amore fan. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Me too. I'm
and
down.
he and he actually he gave this inspiring pep talk to me. Like I said, like the way you come to the ring, you're so like charismatic and like he's kind of like courageous, and he was giving me like this pep talk. He told me never tell people like the typical never let people tell you how to be, like never let anyone dictate how you should be. Like he's actually a really nice guy. Like
Yeah.
and I joked around. I said, can you believe that stuff that Simon I like Simon. What's his name? He goes by Simon Grimm now. Simon Gotch. I'm
Oh,
a fan
okay.
of Simon Gotch, and when it came to both sides, like I was trying to be like neutral, but I was like, "Did you hear what Simon Gotch said?" And he was like, "Yeah, but you know what? I try." He's like very cool too about it. He was like saying, "It's like I try put it past me. It's like water under the bridge, clean
Oh, yeah.
slate type."
Yeah, no, I like Enzo a lot. I mean, me and Joe, obviously, you've listened to the show. We take our cracks at people and stuff like that sometimes, but we never try to we're never vicious about it. I mean, Joey does a character called Little Zoe, which is hilarious, and I love when he does that because it makes me laugh so hard. But no, we've never had anything but his back. You know, I mean, as far as you know, the way that, our viewers and our listeners actually see Enzo, they understand the situation. Nobody thinks that he did anything wrong to that girl. Everybody is very confident that she tried to entrap him, and unfortunately, that's the case with some people, and unfortunately, you're going to see that come out more and more with some other people too, is that there's going to be cases of revenge and people trying to trap other people into scenarios that are just not legit. But yeah, no, Enzo's a good guy. I met him at the big wrestling show at LaGuardia and stuff like that. He's very calm, very cool. I mean, he's everything that he is on screen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, yeah. And who else is very nice? I met at the '80s wrestling con. I met Francine, and she's a very sweethearted woman. Francine from ECW.
Yeah. Yeah, Joey loves her. Joey, I remember the last time that we talked about Francine, which was a couple years back or whatever else like that. Joey absolutely loves her and just says that she's just the nicest person that
is.
To the point where it's like you don't expect nice people to come from ECW. But the way that he put it, he's like, she's so gentle and so nice and so bubbly, It's like, oh, okay, that's really cool to hear, because a lot of the times you always worry. I mean, even as fans, you always worry that the people on screen, obviously that's not who they are in reality, but you don't want them to be on screen and then in real life they're just complete jerks, Nobody wants that.
So. You know what I told her, Anthony? I told her, like how most people, like ECW fans, will remember, if there's one name they'll remember from ECW, it'll be Tommy Dreamer for the men. For the women, I said that when people are going to think about the women in ECW, they're going to think Francine, because Francine was the epitome of it, like ECW for the women.
I was a Raven guy. When it comes to the men in ECW, I was absolutely a Raven guy. I loved Raven. There's been multiple points of his career that he should have been a lot higher than he was, but he's had some of my favorite feuds of all time. Matter of fact, one of my favorite feuds of all time was Raven versus CM Punk. Back when they were still doing the independents and ROH and overseas and stuff like that, where CM Punk was very much working the straight edge gimmick. And this was back during his ROH days. I think Samoa Joe was still down there, and Bryan Danielson, But CM Punk and Raven were amazing because Raven was playing the alcoholic father role, and CM Punk hated him, and it was just so good. And the crowds, I remember they did this one when they were up in, I think it was in London, maybe it might have been Manchester. I think it was in London. Anyways, so they did this one match, and all the people in the crowd, because to some people CM Punk was the heel, and to other people CM Punk was the face. So if you were a person that enjoyed drinking and smoking, you were a Raven fan. If you were tired of people drinking and smoking, you were a CM Punk fan. So it was literally people divided by their own ethics and their own, their habits. And the way that it was presented, I remember CM Punk coming out there, and people are just throwing beer at him, just all over the place. And he's soaked head to toe in nothing but beer. And he's just like, I fucking hate you people. I loved it. It was great. It's such, if you can get the crowd, and that's the best thing about wrestling too, is that's why sometimes the best shows are the smaller shows, because the best crowds are the ones that are totally interactive with the storyline. And I don't mean to a distracting point. Like now you get people that are chanting stupid things in the middle of a match and they're just disrupting stuff. Like that's not what I'm talking about. But when the crowd is in the same wave, like that same feeling as the way that the actual match is going, like when they're cheering when the good guy hits and they're booing when the bad guy hits, that adds to it. Like it just presents a completely different type of show, and I love those moments. Those moments are amazing. But sorry, I know I went from Raven to that, but still.
Oh, no, it's quite all right, man. It's like, do you think that it's fair to say that when it comes to riding, making the crowd like a ruckus, do you think that CM Punk and Bubba Dudley are very similar, very good at doing that?
Wow, that's a comparison I have never heard before. I could see it. Yeah, they both use the same, they can both use that same mentality. They are very good antagonists. Kevin Nash was a good antagonist once upon a time too. JBL was a good antagonist. JBL was a good antagonist. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that are good antagonists. Obviously, Bobby Heenan is a king antagonist. If you want,
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll tell you after this.
I was going to say Bobby Heenan, Mr. Perfect was a good antagonist. Um, gosh, Paul Heyman is an amazing antagonist. You know,
Matt,
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of names you could put on that list, but there's something special to be said about people that can really work the crowd into a froth. You
Scott
know.
Steiner.
Oh yeah, Scott Steiner though I've never gotten angry because of Scott Steiner, but the dude can make me laugh. He can totally make me laugh. Yeah.
He does. Yeah, and you know who's one like announcer that when I see him, he's doing an excellent job playing the heel because I hated him so much. Mark Madden. He
Yes,
did a
Mark Madden
great
was good.
job. And they said Michael Cole did a good job on getting on people's nerves while watching. I thought Mark Madden, did that perfectly natural.
Michael Cole, I don't know. I won't give Michael Cole that much credit because I think he's an antagonizing figure, only because a lot of us really just don't like him. So that might be a different scenario as opposed to somebody that's actually riling up the crowd. You know, like
And
even yeah, like Jim Ross he's a great protagonist. You know, yeah.
would you say Joey Styles too is another one?
Protagonist, yeah, but as far as antagonist, Joel Gertner for ECW, absolutely. Joel Gertner was, oh, he would piss people off. He was
Well,
so filthy mouthed. Yes, I loved him, dude. He was great. Joel Gertner is the man. You know,
yeah.
another guy that I'm really surprised in 2020 isn't a part of this business somehow.
Who's that?
Joel Gertner.
Oh, Joel Gertner. Okay, I thought you were going
Right.
to.
Oh no. That's what I'm saying is like I'm just surprised that he's not working
I'm,
for WWE and teaching people at least. Like, I understand that you can't drop all the things that Joel Gertner used to say, but clearly the guy has talent that should be shared with other people, you know?
I And you know who I like too? I mean, the guy is totally underrated, but and people just overlook him in WWE, and that's Kevin Kelly.
Kevin Kelly was okay, yeah.
I
Yeah.
liked him. He's okay, like him. Do you remember? And he wasn't an announcer, but do you remember the wrestler Just Joe, where he would just make
Yes.
up lies about people and try to get them to fight them?
That was intelligent. I love that. Yes, that's old school, but I love Just Joe. Just Joe was great. Yeah.
Anthony, wasn't that Jax or Metal? Like when WWE
Yeah.
at the it was running like the Jax and Metal TV show.
Yeah. Jacked. Yeah. WWE Jacked, Metal, Shotgun Saturday Night, all those days. Back during the Sunday Night Heat days. Yes. I love those days. I miss those. Yeah, there was a lot of them. Then they also, which one?
No, Velocity. Yep. Velocity was the counterpart for Heat, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And you know what? I'm a fan, and I'll tell you why I'm a fan of his. But another guy I'm a fan of, I know a lot of people take digs at him, but I'm a fan of Zack Ryder mainly because I sympathize with the character that he played because that storyline with Eve Torres, kind of made me feel like what I went in elementary school, where it was very similar. I mean, obviously, I didn't get kicked in where like he did, but I can sympathize with the Zack Ryder character because with the whole Eve Torres storyline.
Zack Ryder, I mean, he actually plugged our show. I still use that intro every once in a while with Zack Ryder plugging us. Zack Ryder is a tragedy to me because Zack Ryder, when he was doing the YouTube shtick before WWE even caught on, before up, down, down, before any of that stuff, Zack Ryder knew that doing a YouTube show was not only going to get his character over, but it was also going to bring in more eyes to himself and the product at the same time. And at the time, WWE didn't know what to do with that. And while he was working with WWE, he was always kind of in these embarrassing angles. He was always in these embarrassing matches. And sans a couple moments in his career, like winning the Battle Royal at WrestleMania and stuff like that, sans a couple moments in his career, I think that he was tremendously underutilized. And it's because of that, when you look back at his career, you kind of see like, oh, well, what did he really do? And it's like, I don't blame him for it. I really don't. I think that the guy had a lot more talent to offer. I think he's another one of those scenarios like an Enzo, where here's a guy with a lot of character and they just don't know what to do with it. And it's not the first time. I mean, if you start digging into a lot of these people that have been underutilized through WWE over the years, the same thing always comes back. Oh, Vince doesn't get it. Vince just doesn't get it. Vince doesn't know what you're doing. Vince has no clue. And so if Vince didn't understand, it didn't matter how good you were. It didn't matter how forward thinking your character was or your ideas for storylines or even your matches. If Vince didn't get it, then you didn't get it, you know? So,
You think
but yes,
also,
I like Zach, but I thought that he was underutilized.
yeah, I like Zach too, especially when he had the storyline with Eve Torres. I had sympathy for him because I kind of relate to that because I went through something similar in the 5th grade. So it's definitely like, you know, like I can relate to this guy, like type
Sure.
thing. When you're watching someone and you're saying, wow, I could totally relate to this.
Right, right. Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
and you know who's another one I'm a big fan of, and because you and him are like similar, because I think you have a voice for announcing, like being a narrator, and
Oh,
just
thank
like, and this is my favorite, one of my favorite wrestlers. Unfortunately, he didn't get much thing, but Ken Kennedy.
Kennedy. Yeah, he's an interesting case. He actually, you know, he was back in the NWA before all this went down. It was nice to see him, you know, working again in the NWA. So yeah, no, I have nothing wrong with Kennedy. I think he got a couple of bad moments in his career. He
Yeah.
got a couple of raw deals, but no, he's another guy. You know, he's got a hell of a physique now. He got big. I mean, even when you look back on what he looked like in WWE, he was much smaller. And when he came around to NWA, he got really big. And I was like, oh, okay, dude, that's good, you know? So he's going to try and work that side of him. And I hope that, you know, when the pandemic clears and we can start having, you know, in-house wrestling again, I hope he comes back.
He was one of the very first heels I was cheering for because every week when he was feuding with Tony Chimmel, like one week he was saying, "There's 2 things you absolutely suck at. Number 1 is announcing. Number 2 is announcing." And then I remember one time he brought a donkey to JBL brought a donkey to a ring, and he goes, "Whoa, look, Tony Chimmel, everybody! You look good, Tony. Not bad. Good job."
Yeah, he was quick. He was a quick-witted guy, for sure.
Oh,
Kennedy
yeah.
was, he could think on the spot.
Also, yeah, I think the whole thing that he improvises too. Like there was one time where he was being interviewed by Josh Matthews, and he goes, "Speaking of changing things, maybe you need to change your cologne. No, maybe you need to change your underpants. You smell like
Right.
Arkansas."
Yeah, he was very good at improvising. Absolutely. That's
Uh,
another thing that's great about, that's when you know you have a good talker too, is when they can improvise the moment and they can make people laugh or they can get people angry. You know, that's why you'll you know, Kennedy, CM Punk, Bubba, you know, there's a lot of guys that can improvise that moment. You know, absolutely.
did you have a favorite and least favorite WrestleMania match from any of the WrestleMania, like from all WrestleManias put together? Like if you could pick your number 1 match and your number 1 least favorite match, what would it be?
Well, my number one match will always go back to the sentimental one. And I know it's cheeseball to say that, but WrestleMania 6, Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan, it is my favorite match. There's a lot attached to it for me as a person. You know, least favorite match? Ugh. I don't know. There's been some stinkers, man. There's, I don't know, Big Show versus Aki Bono in a
Uh,
diaper match. That was
that
a little rough.
I really hated, and I'll tell you, because it was like the worst build up ever. Booker T, Triple H, because the wrong guy won.
Yeah, that's so even today it's so controversial. Like I guarantee you, when people bring that up to Triple H, he's just like, there's no way. Because it wasn't just the fact of the match of Triple H winning as the heel, even though it was a heel program, which makes it even weirder. But it was some of the promos that were cut, him calling him boy all the time. It's like, oh,
Get him a towel. I was
yeah,
like,
it's
oh,
like, didn't age well, Triple H. Didn't age well.
oh. If you had actually my top 3 least favorite matches, that would be up there. Kane versus Great Khali at WrestleMania 23
Oh,
was that actually got 0 stars. From what I read, it made 0 stars in reviews.
yeah. I believe it. It was
And then
pretty rough.
the third one, mainly because I felt bad for Zack Ryder, Team Johnny versus Team Teddy.
Okay. Team Johnny versus you're gonna have to refresh me on that one. I don't remember Team Johnny versus Team Teddy. I
Team
mean, I
Johnny.
know. Go ahead.
No, what were you about to say, sir?
No. Go ahead. I was saying, like, who was on that actual match? Team Johnny
I
versus Team
have to
Teddy.
look, but I know Team Teddy had like Zack Ryder, Great Khali. Surprising, you have a giant on the team and you lose. So I'm actually shocked.
Oh, Johnny Ace. That's right. Okay. All right.
I,
Yes, I remember the matches. Yes.
uh,
I was lost there for a second. I'm like, Team Teddy. All right, Team Teddy Long. Team Johnny. I just totally blanked on Johnny Ace for being Raw. My bad.
That was like one of the worst matches I've ever seen. Like I refused to watch WrestleMania 28 because of that match.
What about what was it? Snooki
Uh,
versus who was it? It wasn't Trish.
and
Was it Trish?
Suki, Trish, and John Morrison, right? The cold shoulder match.
Yeah, so
When you pay for it,
bad. So bad. Snooki, come on, it was horrible. And
right.
not to be outdone, they had JWoww and TNA have a match too. Wasn't she in a match or something like that? Yeah.
I saw it. Well, it was. Didn't they have a parody character named Cookie or something?
Yeah, it's horrible, dude.
And then the bro, not hype bros, but what were they in? DJ. I'm drawing blanks. I think he's doing a parody character in NXT, like Robbie something. Robbie E.
Oh, Robbie E. Yeah.
I can't like. But if you're asking me my favorites, I guess because my first WrestleMania was actually on VHS, which was WrestleMania 8 at the Hoosier Dome.
Yeah.
It had Macho Man versus Randy Savage, which was one of my favorites, even though
Nice.
clearly bladed in that match. I loved Roddy Piper versus Bret Hart.
Are you watching any of the local promotions these days?
I haven't. Like the only thing I watch right now is Raw, SmackDown, sometimes NXT, but I really watch AEW.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of movements. Like obviously now TNA is back on is on Access Television, and we just lost NJPW and Women of Wrestling off of Access. So I don't know what's going to happen to those shows. ROH is still on, but everything is obviously halted right now. And yeah, everything is getting shuffled around right now. So it's really interesting to see what's going to happen. Obviously, we don't have Lucha Underground on TV anymore. There's no more Lucha Underground.
What about MLW?
Which one?
MLW?
MLW, yes, MLW is on TV. I actually don't watch MLW. I probably should, but I don't. So, yeah.
And I think that, and let me get your opinion on this, because remember, I think was it last year or 2 years ago where Randy Orton fought AJ Styles at WrestleMania?
2 years ago, I think. Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, over 2 years ago.
Do you think that because they had a lot of people at the time in the company, like, and they did name bomb Dixie Carter? I mean, Randy Orton himself name dropped Dixie Carter. Do you think that would have been a perfect opportunity for a TNA WWE invasion, like they kind of did with WCW and ECW, like an alliance, or no?
I don't think they would have done it right. The problem with Vince is that he very much is ego driven. I mean, even when you go back and you look at that invasion angle, while it's fun to reminisce and go back to it, the way it was handled was really poorly. And it did no favors for anybody in any other company besides WWE, even though they were all WWE wrestlers. They were clearly put on different castes, as well as, how they were presented on television. I don't think that WWE would have given the Impact or the TNA people enough credence or credibility for them to ever look like an actual invading threat. And that's the problem with invasion angles. It was great when ROH and CZW had an invasion angle. When CZW came into ROH and just started whooping everybody's ass, and they had the pure matches, and then they had the deathcore matches. Those were fantastic. But there was a respect there. There were ROH fans that were purists, and then there were CZW, deathmatch wrestling fans. So it made perfect sense to have them hate each other because they had an equal footing. They were oil and water, But as far as TNA and WWE, TNA would always be presented as a pimple. That's what they would be presented as, an uncomfortableness.
Do you think that the ECW invasion in 1997, when I think Paul Heyman, I mean, that was where Jerry Lawler gave the infamous promo. It's like being at the bingo hall is like being in the toilet because there's nothing in here but shit.
Yeah.
Do you think that was actually a good, well done invasion, or no?
Well, people actually hated, Lawler for all that. Like there was definitely a contingent of fans, especially for ECW, that they really hated Jerry Lawler because of that, because it was almost like he was shooting, like these weren't just scripted words. This is how he actually felt about these people. Like he looked down on them. And that's that's kind of what they conveyed, even in the ECW documentary that they came out with and stuff like that. You know, they kind of conveyed that Jerry Lawler was looking down on us, and that's what fueled us. That was like Paul Heyman's response to it. It's like we were happy that he was treating us like shit because that makes us want to excel even more.
Yeah.
And I think that that would have been a very interesting time, you know, if they went through with that. But there was a lot of, you know, crossovers with Taz and other, you know, a lot of the ECW talent jumping ship to different companies, obviously the Dudley Boys and everything else like that. So it was an odd time. ECW was a, you know, a turning point for wrestling, but silently. And I don't think people really recognized that until WWE pointed it out in documentaries, until Paul Heyman went on record, until WCW closed down. I think that's when people really started to recognize how much ECW had value to wrestling as a whole.
Makes sense. And I'm going to bring this up because we talked about, you know, Kevin Sullivan before. I just realized, you know, who's one person that didn't like, and he makes claims too. Like, I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, I find it very hard to believe, but the one person that hates Benoit more than Kevin Sullivan, that's Mike Graham. I want to get your opinion on Mike Graham, especially after seeing that shoot. You've seen that shoot interview he did, right? I know he's.
No, I didn't. I don't think I've seen the Mike Graham shoot interview. I've seen Mike Graham talk a few times. He used to do Legends of the Round Table with like Patterson, Jim Ross, you know, the Round Table stories, which was, you know, really interesting. But no, I don't really have too much depth into Mike Graham. You know, obviously outside of the, you know, the Florida promotions and stuff. Like I don't know too much about his history. I think there is a book out that was either written by him or written about him that I still need to pick up. Like I'm a huge fan of wrestling books. Like I don't have any here in outside of Philly. Like I'm a Chicago boy, but ever since this move, I have all my books still back in Chicago. Couldn't lug them with me. But yeah, that's one of them that I got to catch up on. But no, I didn't know that Mike Graham actually had more of a hatred for Benoit than Sullivan.
No, I'll send you the link though. Like he basically claimed that he one time threatened Benoit's life and that he backed down to him, and then Benoit called human resource on him.
Really?
And he also claims that he made Psycho Sid back down from it, or like Sid Vicious back down from a fight from him, or something like that. I don't know how true it is, but I'm just recounting.
Yeah, I would weigh out a lot of things that Mike Graham says with a grain of salt. That's all I'll say on that one. With being nice, you know, because obviously he's passed. But yeah, there's a lot of stories that I've heard over the years that surround Mike Graham that just, I don't know, they don't fly. Like sometimes you'll hear a story and go, oh my God, that's horrible, or oh my God, that's amazing. But then sometimes you hear stories and you're like, did that really happen? Did this squirrely little 5'2" man really bitch out a guy who's 7'9"? Really?
It's so funny that you say that because I think Perry Saturn gave a shoot interview one time, and he said like, Mike Graham said something like, "I made the little band of midgets," which, you know, everyone called like Eddie, Chris, Benoit,
Malenko, yeah.
vanilla midgets. He made them run to New York, and then Perry goes in the shoot interview after watching. He goes, "He's a half foot shorter than me, and he's calling me a midget." Oh, bless you.
Yeah,
then there was another one. Oh, but Perry was, you know, like he did something like he's very modest still. Like I remember the interviewer asked, "Who weighs more, Moppy or Terry?" He goes, "Moppy."
Yeah,
he really
Perry Saturn's a good guy.
He really.
Yeah.
He said, "Which was the worst thing you ever did? Wear a dress in WCW or have Moppy?" Moppy.
Moppy was. He could still. You know what? I mean, I know he's not in wrestling anymore and he's around again and stuff like that. But if he popped up one day on TV with Moppy, I think people would still pop. I really do. I think people would still pop if they just had like. And I don't care what show it was. I don't care if it's AEW or WWE or something else. If he just popped up sitting there with like a drink in his side, and then there's the Moppy and a drink over on Moppy's side, I think people would still pop for that. I don't know. I know I would. I would.
It's a shame though, Missionary, that we didn't get the dream match. We didn't get Moppy versus Head with Al Snow. We have Al.
Or what was the horse called that Chavo had?
Oh, wait, was it the?
It was like a toy horse or like a horse head, like with a stick.
Oh, like the little kids thing where you ride it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, what was the name of it? That was a WCW gimmick. And it was like right?
Yeah.
With that, remember, like Al Snow got into a fight with Head, and he started carrying that giant deer head.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, he had a few things. He had more than just a deer head. He had a bunch of different things too. And then of course there was Pepper, the dog.
After,
That
and did you know what?
Big Boss Man ate him.
Here's what I don't get though. Why do people hate the Kettle from Hell match? What was so bad about it?
It was hilarious. I don't hate it. It was just because I think because the way that they described the kennel from hell, it was supposed to be these rabid, vicious Rottweilers on the outside of the ring, rah, 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 rah. And it was like one dog was humping, the other dog was taking a shit.
Oh, that's so funny. And they used the King Kong Bundy Hulk Hogan cage. Remember that giant, the blue cage, and it wasn't big. It was
classics, yeah.
And they use that in the video games though, like too. Like they use that in WWF Warzone, Attitude Era.
I like the blue cage, man. Are you a fan of the blue cage or the regular fence cage? Because
I love the blue cage. It's vintage.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, not only that, it looks like it hurts. I don't know if it actually does, if it hurts more than the fences, but it looks like it hurts more because I can imagine the fence cage hurts a lot too because there's a lot of like little twines and breakoffs on it, and it's easy to have like all those little grating on your back. So it's probably like a ripping with the fence, like sometimes when you hit it fast, or your fingers get caught in there when they're trying to climb to the top. Whereas the blue one, you can just put your whole hands in there and just go up like a ladder. But the blue one always looked like if somebody was falling against it, it just hurt a lot more.
And I got to ask you this as a fellow wrestling fan. Remember when Gangrel used to come out and he used to spit like the blood? Like, what do you think that was inside that glass really? You think it was wine or like fruit punch or?
Oh yeah. It was all just a concoction of stuff. That's all it was. He was LARPing. Gangrel was LARPing, Which it's amazing too, because I mean, if you know the history of the Gangrel name, that they were attached to White Wolf Studios, which was a role-playing company here in Chicago. Well, back in Chicago, and they did Vampire the Masquerade, they did Werewolf, and Gangrel was actually part of one of the clans. It was in the name of one of the clans in Vampire the Masquerade, which has a bunch of different games out on Steam and Xbox and PS. So yeah, it was all attached, and he got away with using that name. So
I like the I see, and you know what's ironic about the whole thing with Over the Edge too is because a week prior, I went to Blockbuster because this was when Blockbuster was relevant back then. 99. I actually rented the WWF In Your House game for PS1, and one of the characters I played as was Owen Hart. So it was just irony. And I love that game too. Like Ahmed Johnson was in it, Warrior was in it.
Yeah, dude, there were some great wrestling games. I mean, I know a lot of people like the 2K series. I'm not a big fan. I like the old school stuff, but is it okay if we get ready to wrap this up soon? Or?
Yeah, yes, I'm just going to ask two things though, if you don't mind. Like, first off, I definitely want to pose for a picture, like a 3 to 5 second pose, so that way I can use that as a frame grab or a thumbnail for our show when I post it.
All right.
Okay. On the count of 3, we'll hold a pose like a smiling pose. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, and because this is an open forum, Anthony, you can plug anything you want at this time. It's okay. Go ahead.
No, it's perfectly fine. I mean, if you guys want to listen to me and obviously my co-hosts, you can follow us on Twitter at Wrestling Soup, at Joe Numbers, and at I am John Draper on Twitter. And obviously listen to the show every Thursday night and Sundays following pay-per-views. Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. WrestlingSoup.com. You can find us on literally every platform: Spotify, Apple Play Store, Google Play Store, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're pretty much, if there's a platform you listen to podcasts to, we're probably on there. We've been doing the show for over a decade now, have millions upon millions of downloads. So yeah, tune in, give us a shot. But thank you very much again, Peter. I appreciate coming on the show, man.
No problem. And before you go, I just want to say, I'm supposed to be interviewing former WCW announcer Scott Hudson this Friday, which I'm very looking forward to.
Nice, nice,
Yeah.
very cool.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, Mish, is that we'll wrap it up, and then when I say like the recording stops, then I'll just let you know because Skype is very weird. Like if you stop the video, then the recording doesn't get saved, so you have to stop the video before we end the call.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so we'll say our closing things, and then I'll let you know when we're stop recording. Okay, so it was great having you on, Mish. I mean, it's awesome that we finally get to talk after being a longtime fan of 8 years.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the love and support. Really, I do. It's
Always.
been we're gonna have another 10.
Absolutely. I hope to get Don Tony, Kevin Castle, and Joey Numbers one day on separate shows for future interviews.
Absolutely.
Okay, you take care, my man.
Thank you, Peter.